Good morning, everybody, and happy Monday to you. This is another episode of the Grief Let's Talk About It podcast. You guys already know who it is. It is Tony Mitch. I'm the host of this podcast. And as always, we are bringing some amazing people to you guys. And today is going to be a good one. This is the first time that this individual has come and done this. And so we appreciate that because she's letting us do the honors of introducing her into this field that we call grief. And she's going to do some amazing work. So you guys, if you haven't already, do me a favor, head over to that YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell notification so you'll be notified every time that we drop a new episode. But also, her info is down there. So, you know what I'm saying? You guys sit back, relax, have your questions ready. And without further ado, please help me welcome my next guest, Jame B. Hey, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Now, before we get started, I want to let the audience know that this is for educational purposes only. So, we're not doctors or anything like that, but we do offer some really healthy tools. Now, before we jump into your story, tell people who you are, where you're from, and about the work that you do.
Well, my name is Jame, and I am a certified holistic health coach, and I am certified in nutrition, trauma, and I am a master NLP practitioner, and I'm from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Hey, now see, Pittsburgh, I've been through there a couple times, and it was a good time. I played football out there when I was in Job Corps. And, I have to say, it was definitely different. Definitely different. I'm from the East Coast myself. So, definitely love that the East Coast vibe is a little bit faster. I'm out here in Colorado right now. And, I have to say, Colorado's a little bit slower paced, which I like. I'm getting older and I can't run as fast anymore, So let's talk about how did you get into this work that you do right now? Or getting into?
So I'm gonna say I come from my last career I was a truck driver. I was an over-the-road truck driver. Okay. So I did that for about 2 years. And then I became pregnant with my son, and I had him in 2013, and I came back and I did local work. Being a local truck driver, I had one major trucking incident. I wasn't injured from it, but I believe that accident itself stemmed from actually threw me into fibromyalgia, the diagnosis of fibromyalgia like a year or two later. What ended my trucking career was actually me falling off my truck, something so simple, and I broke my driving ankle. So therefore, after having 2 surgeries on my driving ankle and nerve damage and whatnot, that ended my career. So the ending of my career was kind of like, devastating because it put me in a situation where I was like, financially not able to take care of my family because I was a single mother, Right. So it threw me into a state of depression. I was very suicidal at that time, going through the depression and then dealing with my health issues, going to the doctor like almost every single week for something, and getting like multiple diagnoses from like fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, nerve damage, what else? Hashimoto's, pre-diabetes, the list goes on. And then right. Also I ended up getting a pacemaker for my heart issues. I was born with a heart murmur and ended up having arrhythmia problems, so I had to get a pacemaker. So dealing with all that definitely sent me into this deep dive depression of why am I going to these doctors and no one can tell me exactly what's wrong with me, what's going on, And then So I got kind of fed up with that, you know, going through 2 years of like therapy, traditional talk therapy, and not getting to the root core of like why um, I'm depressed. I mean, well, of course, we know that, like, you know, the physical elements were contributing to my mental health, right? But
Right.
and then I had anger issues, which, you know, dated back to my childhood, right, like being abandoned by my parents. But anyways, so I ended up going on this holistic journey of like changing my diet, going vegan, doing the shadow work, really going within myself to heal these parts of me, that why I was so angry all the time, um, why, like, you know, the deep depression. And as I went through my healing journey physically and mentally, I was like, you know, this, I know a lot of people suffer from this, especially like, you know, illness, or mental health, I should say. I don't want to say illness because it's not an illness. Like, you know, it's just we suppress our emotions because that's
Right.
what society teaches us to do, that we shouldn't be emotional, shouldn't show our emotions. But so it led me to wanting to help other people. So that's why I got into becoming a holistic coach.
Okay. Now that makes a lot of sense. And then when did you put two and two together about nutrition and and how it helped you, deal with the day-to-day things that you were starting to experience?
Um, well, it was more so like I had always been kind of like health conscious. I've always like worked out and kind of watched what I ate and whatnot. But and I experimented with the keto diet.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
so and that gave me a lot of energy, and I actually lost weight because once I left my career as a truck driver, I was home all the time. So therefore, you know, the weight gain and, you
Mm.
know, the eating because you're depressed and bored, right? So I started to gain a lot of weight. And that was like one of the real reasons why I started vegan, was because I wanted to cut down the weight that I had gained toward like during this time of like
Mhm.
being depressed and not being physically active. Um, so that's like why, that's how I got into it, was like the weight management. And then, like, you know, I ended up coming across a friend of she's a friend of mine. She's a Reiki master. So
Mhm.
she helped me with, like, you know, moving my energy and helping me, like, you know, saying, hey, get into meditation and you know, try to balance your chakras. That'll help with, like, you know, your energy and also your physical, like, disabilities that you're having. So that's, you know, I had some people guide me along the way, and then also doing my own due diligence, researching things.
Now, I, now that leads me to the question, because you being a single mother, and dealing with the depression, and I'm just going back just a little bit just to elaborate on something, dealing with the depression. How did that affect your relationship with your child or with the people around you, because they're watching you go through this as well, correct?
Right, right. I mean, I went through like isolation, right? I isolated myself from everybody around me because I just didn't want to be, I I didn't want to be around anybody. I was wallowing in my own self pity.
Mm. Oh wow, yeah.
Um, you know, I was, like I said, I was suicidal. I just didn't want to be here anymore. I kind of felt like I was existing. I wasn't living. Like, you
Right.
know, I didn't have a purpose, and that's sad because we get so wrapped in our career that that becomes our identity, right?
Mhm.
Our career, motherhood, you know, sister, daughter. We have all these labels, and once we lose one of these labels, we think that we lose our identity. And that's why I had to go within and do the shadow work,
Right.
and actually, like, strip away all those labels and get to the core of who I am. What makes Jame happy? Who is Jame without all these different labels?
And the reason why I asked that, because a lot of people really don't pay attention to the loss of identity, right? You know what I'm saying? Because you was a truck driver, and you know what I'm saying, then you got hurt, and then you was a single mother, and now that's taken away, and now your identity is there. And you're right. There's People don't really put in those different areas of identity, right? You know what I'm saying? Being a daughter, being a mom, being a friend, being a sister, all of these different things. And they do play a lot in there. You was a truck driver. Now you're trying to figure out life. And so that grieving aspect is very, very similar to that of when you lose someone. And I think that's the point I'm trying to drive home to people, that the grief is yours, right? But there are people out there that can relate to what you're going through. They may not understand the totality of what you're going through, but it's the similarities that you may have, and those tools that you can develop across the board that can help, right? Um, Now it leads me to the next thing, like, you being diagnosed with all of these different things, and then you get a pacemaker.
Hmm.
Um, I've never had a pacemaker, but I was born with a heart murmur as well, and through just doing physical exercise, I was pretty fortunate in not in certain things not happening to me, right? But it was definitely a fight. It was definitely a fight. And now you have a mentor, right? Um, what was your journey leading up into that moment, to where you was like, I need to get my shit together.
Oh gosh, it was the fact of going to the doctor and nobody could tell me why. I mean, I had just about every specialist you can think of, from a
Right.
cardiologist to an endocrinologist to, like, any all of them, right? And no one could, like, tell me why every time came to the doctor, or they sent me for testing, something else came up. So it
Hmm.
was like, and then of course, their remedy is, here's a prescription for that,
Hmm.
right? And I've never been one who took any type of prescriptions. I ain't even like taking aspirin for a headache. I would let it go until it got to the point where it was a migraine, and I was like, okay, we got to do something about this.
Right.
Um, so I've never been like one of those who really like taking medication. So I got to the point where I was like, these are supposed to be people who went to school for X amount of years. They're supposed to be specialists. They're supposed to know these things and how to heal. So I actually got to the point where I was like, I'm going to learn about myself. I'm going to learn about my body, how it works, and I'm going to heal myself. So that's what I did.
I love that. I love that because you did take the initiative, and I think a lot of people are afraid to do it. I talk to a lot of people, and I'm with you. I don't do medication, right? It's something that's just not don't sit well with me. I will figure it out. I will go the all natural route, healthy fruits and vegetables, healthier proteins, leaner proteins, etc. And but also do understand the benefits of having fats added to it for the body, for the brain function, etc. So I do a lot of that, and a lot of times I don't eat for the most part, I don't eat a lot of processed foods. And I think I kind of figured that out before I went through my grieving process, that processed foods did a lot more damage to the body than and it wasn't really beneficial. There was too many chemicals added in, and I knew that I always felt like crap. But of course, I'm not the person to go to the doctor neither. I will fight. I will fight tooth and I'm like, I don't care. Look, I can have skin hanging off my bone. I'll be like, look, just wrap it up. Just wrap it up. Give me some needle and thread. I'll, I'll put that back up there, and we just go hope for the best, right? But I'm
Right.
also really good at hiding a lot of stuff as well, so people don't worry about me. And it sounds like, with the mentality that you have, you're like, no, um, how how did this affect your body, right? Because we carry a lot of that stuff within, and a lot of people never really make that connection, right? You know what I'm saying? We carry grief in our lungs. We carry stress in our nervous system. We carry depression in our heart and our brains, um, and it does. When we actually begin to put the pieces together, there's a process that you have to go through, um, in order to get yourself back to feeling somewhat like a normal human being, correct?
Right, right. And I think that's like, a lot of my heart issues, right? I had the arrhythmia,
Right.
and I had a lot of anger built up from my parents because I felt like, they abandoned me, and I had such, you know, anger as a secondary emotion to hurt. I was very hurt by that because I felt like, they left me as a child and went on and remarried
Mm,
and had kids with their spouses that they found, and I was kind of like, left to my grandmother, my father's mother. And
okay.
so I carried a lot of resentment, and and I was very angry growing up as a child. I used to fight constantly, like every day I was getting into a fight. So and now I look back, like as I was doing my shadow work, I was like, "Jeez, like me fighting all that all that anger built up because of like my parents abandoning me, and now I understand like why I was constantly wanting to fight like all the time. I was in a fight every single day, and I think I should have been a boxer instead of like
But that is totally natural, right? Because it is a trauma response, uh,
Mhm.
and sometimes we don't realize that. I think, and I could be wrong, and I want to get your thoughts on this as well. But a lot of times when we grow up fighting like that, it's a survival instinct, um, and we do it because we're hurting, right? You
Mhm.
know what I'm saying? The feeling of abandonment, people that supposed to love you and care for you and things like that leave you, and it leaves us in a place of not feeling like we belong, and things like that. And I think when we don't have the words to express what we're going through, we express it in different ways. And I talk about that because it's it's our go-to language, right? In grief. Grief and anger go hand in hand. It's the first thing that we learn how to do. When we don't have anywhere to talk to, we figure out ways of, um, pretty much saying that I need help, but I don't know how to express it. So what I'm going to do is that I'm gonna punch you in your mouth, and then we're gonna go from there, right? But it's that old statement: you better stop crying before I give you something to cry about,
Mhm.
type thing, right? We get taught at a very early age. No one cares about our tears, so we have to learn how to communicate in a different way. And the connection is that physicality, that physical, that is pretty much, it's a love language. It's physical touch, right? And then the anger, the words that come along with that, we struggle with asking for help. We struggle with telling people, "Hey, I don't like this." Struggle with telling people, "Hey, I'm hurting real bad." And I think if people really understood that, it would change the trajectory of how we approach different situations with individuals.
Right, right. Yeah, I know. Like it took me a long while to like, for some reason I never really held that much resentment against my father. Maybe because my father came and he visited me more often than like my mother.
Hmm.
And then my mother, like, she married this, like, Marine drill sergeant, so he was very like hardcore. um and when I went to go see him, he kind of like, he was mean towards me, right? He kind of like bullied me and whatnot, and I didn't feel like my mother protected me. It really took me some time to actually go within and like really, really forgive her and let go of that. And
Hmm.
once I did, it was like I could feel it within like my heart. It was just like a release of like all this anger, all this hurt, sadness, and just like it was like a release. And I even it even makes you feel lighter. Like you don't have carry you're not carrying that like burden around on your shoulders, that like actually like a chip on your shoulder, right?
Right.
So the shadow work, really going deep within and asking like why you feel that way and why you react the way you react, it is really like an awesome healing journey. And I think that's why I changed from nutrition to, becoming a like trauma coach, because the release that you get from that, it's like, a big lift off your shoulder, and then it opens you up to being more compassionate. And also now I can look at people from a compassionate and empathetic like view, and not judgmental, and say, they're reacting because of trauma. And I can actually call out the trauma, response, like, that's because of like mommy issues, that's because of daddy issues. So it's really like eye opening when you go through that.
Now, listening to you and everything, I'm glad that you chose to go this route, right? Because you have an in depth understanding, and I love the fact that you brought up shadow work for the simple fact of a lot of people don't know about that shadow work. They don't know that, what I'm saying, they don't know the depth that these things can, the effect that these things can have on you, and shadow work. When I remember, let's see, it was a couple years ago when the book on shadow work, I remember, came out, and it was such a huge thing. I've always wanted to talk to someone about um, the shadow work aspect of it, and I get bits and pieces of it, right? But I want to dive deeper into that. But now, before I dive deeper into that, there's a comment up here I want to get your thoughts on as well,
Mhm.
and then I want to get into the explanation of shadow work and what's the biggest takeaway that people can take from that. Um, and this comes from Lincoln Smith. Lincoln, thank you again, brother. But he says, but to know even today as a man, it is still like that most of the time. I had to get to the point of not caring if people thought if I was weak or too sensitive, because that's not the case. I'm a human being. Um, I'm going to comment on that, and because I'm a huge advocate, I'm a men's grief coach, and I'm always advocating for men to open up and learn how to articulate what's going on. I'm not going to say this and apologize for it because um, I get so sick and tired of being labeled as the strong one. I don't always want to have to be the strong one. I have emotions. Life beats up on us a lot, and it's okay to have moments where you can express yourself and not carry around so much pain. So, to be honest with you, I stopped caring what the fuck society thought about me. I stopped caring what people thought about me. I stopped caring the way that life in general started thinking about me. And I think that was the deciding factor of me going, I'm an individual human being. It is my job to have the best human experience that I possibly can. And what it did, and this is where that shadow work comes in, right? It led me down a path to where I had to hold myself accountable, develop a state of grace and patience, and to be open to the path that I have been pushed into, right? And then to begin to do that internal work as well, right? You know what I'm saying? And what I mean by that, but I want to before I dive deeper into that, I want to get your thoughts on that.
Oh, my thoughts on it. I definitely. I know, like I was raised by, after my grandmother passed, I did eventually go live with my father, and he was a man who didn't show emotion. He didn't say I love you. He didn't, he showed his emotion and his love for you through materialistic things.
Mm.
And I think that's, or like, going to work and provide. And that was him showing his love. He didn't, he wasn't emotional. And unfortunately, that led to me not being emotional to my children. I was very like, I I was the same way. I showed my love through materialistic things and the fact that I provided, like, a nice house for you, running water, all the necessities that we need, plus, like, anything that you wanted in between that, like your luxuries and whatnot. So I definitely think that, men don't feel like that safety to express their emotions after, you know, being raised by a father who was unexpressive with, like, the the love word, I love you, unexpressive. Like, I remember even when his mother passed, I didn't see him cry. He shed not one tear in front of me. So that's very unfortunate that we have a society where men cannot be emotional because it's deemed weak. Oh, you're a punk. Why are you being so, emotional? So now that I have a son, I give him that safe place. I'm like, I want you to feel that emotion. I don't want you to suppress it, but at the same time, I don't want it to let it control you. Feel it, sit with it, and then let it go.
Okay. I want to add to that because you're right. And when I say this, I'm not taking anything away from you. Sometimes as young boys, sitting with the emotional aspect of it may take a little bit longer because sometimes we may not have the words. And although you are creating the space for that to happen,
Mm-hmm.
letting go can be a very difficult thing, right? Because you have to think about the before, the before that happened. We learn from the people that take care of us. So it becomes a conflict of interest. So, say for instance, if I'm watching you not show any sort of emotion, now this is learned. You're learning this from your father. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and then, you know what I'm saying? He's learning that from somewhere else as well. This is the way society teaches us. And unfortunately, this is learned behavior over a period of time. We're being molded to be very emotionally unintelligent or emotionally unaware. And I say that because I was that person as well. And I still struggle with the thought of emotions, right? And so I still struggle with certain things, and I'm still learning, right? But I do allow myself to sit with what I go through, and it gets hard, right? Because it changes. As a as a mother, as a mother, the biggest challenge would be is to understand understand the situation from a man's point of view, um, and then knowing where it's time to let go and let a man mentor him
Mhm.
to be to be a good man. You teach him whatever he needs to know, but it takes a good mentor to teach him everything there is to be a better man in the world, right? And that's where that teamwork comes in. And I don't take anything away from nobody. I was raised by my mother and everything, but I have to admit, my mom didn't know what it was like to be a man. And so my father, he taught me the best way that he could with what he knew. Did it do damage to me? Yeah, because it was like a generational hurt that had been passed down. I'm supposed to be a certain way, and even when my son passed away, the word that I got from my mother was like, "Baby, stop crying. It's okay. Stop crying." And it didn't sit right with me because I had just lost my son, right?
Mhm.
But then it dawned on me, my mother had never lost a child. My mother was used to me being a certain way, right? She was used to me. She was just like yourself, Jamie. I was out there fighting in the streets, right? You know what I'm saying? My mother was used to me fighting. My mother was used to me being a certain way. So when I am posed with this in-depth hurt, she didn't know how to um, tell me that it was okay. She wanted me to go back to the son that she knew because it's kind of hard to watch the people that you love go through that much pain and not know how to know how to fix it, so to speak, right? And again, these things go hand in hand with everything else, and that's why I'm a huge advocate of putting good mentors in young men's life, and but also I'm a huge advocate of putting mentors in young women's lives as well, right? Because there's things that I can't teach, my, I can't teach a young lady, right? And you know what I'm saying, and so I understand that aspect of it, and again, everybody has their own interpretation of what that looks
Right, right. I mean, like I'm not saying like my son's father is involved in his life, but like he lives in Texas, I live in Pennsylvania, so there is that distance, right?
like. Right,
He's not there every day. Now, my son's father also deals with his own trauma
right. Mm,
because of his father, so it's kind of like um he has some anger issues just like I had anger issues, right?
right, right.
um Dylan stemming from our parents. So like I do understand the fact that like I am not a man, so I can't teach him, but I can give him the tools like to be emotionally intelligent, right? To
Right. Yeah.
actually like journal your thoughts. If you're angry, get those out, journal them out. Get a piece of. I even like that's something that like I've incorporated with him is whenever it's actually supposed to be a daily activity, but now it's turned into like yesterday he had a got upset about something, and I said I incorporate like breathing as well, like to actually once you get upset your nervous system goes into fight or flight, right? So I incorporate with him last night was slow breathing techniques to calm the nervous system, and I had him sit because when you're at when you're I mean heightened emotions, you're not thinking logically. You can't, and he was trying to search for something, so he got like a little upset that he couldn't find something. My son is autistic and he has ADHD. So like, I think these are tools that like, are good for him to actually like, settle that nervous system down. Let's sit and breathe so that we can start to think from like, logically instead of being thinking or doing or reacting emotionally, right?
Right,
um
right.
so I've learned some things and I incorporated in my like my mothering and I try to help him with like whenever he gets upset and he starts over, I don't want to say overreacting, but he becomes very emotional and I try to like bring him back down.
Right. And again, I love that you did that because that pivot right there, that was amazing. For the simple fact of you did fill in those blanks for those people, for those single women out there to help them understand, you know, you can develop some tools, right? And you know what I'm saying, to be able to help in those general areas. But also you mentioned something as well. The father is also dealing with his own set of traumas, his own set of griefs and things like that. And Lincoln put up here, in a lot of cases, because we grew up. I'm a Gen X. I grew up in the '90s with the gangs, and what I'm saying, I grew up selling drugs. I was homeless. I've been to prison, shot, stabbed, lost many of friends along the way, and no one really told taught me how to deal with those things, right? And so I had to figure it out, and it's hard for a young boy out in the world to figure out the world when the world is designed to hurt you on so many different levels, and we carry that around. And unfortunately, and I just did a post about this yesterday. Unfortunately, we get young men and young women. I don't take nothing away from either side, either which side, right? But the one thing that's been common across the board is that blame, right? And we have to be careful not to push our children into a corner to where they begin to blame ourselves for what's going on in an environment that they have nothing to do with. And and I say that to say this because what we do as parents, we tend to put our children in grown-up people's places and forget that they're still children,
Mhm.
right? And so children will go around and blame themselves, which is the darkest form of grief. And it dawned on me yesterday when I was doing the post. It had actually, matter of fact, I started thinking about it probably about 3 weeks ago about that specific stage of grief. I know people never talk about it, but it is a very real stage of grief, the blame game, and this is the darkest moment because this is where that slow destruction begins to happen. And the blame, where I find that it appears in different phases during the process of of grieving. Unfortunately, yeah, we do. We start questioning ourselves, thinking what's wrong with us, or how could I did this, the woulda, coulda, shoulda, wouldas. I mean, and things like that. And unfortunately, there's a lot of us that don't make it back from that. You know, um, there's the drugs and alcohol that play a place in there. There's the bad decisions. I know homelessness, the mental health issues that come about with that, and unfortunately, in 88 to 95% of the time, it results in us taking our own lives because no one ever told us this okay to let it go, right? And when you don't have the necessary tools or people around you to help you, it's easy to get caught up in that moment and go down that rabbit hole and not come back.
Right.
I want to get your thoughts on that.
Oh, that definitely that that shame and that guilt, that was, I think that that's the biggest problem with me as far as like, the abandonment from my parents. I was like, well, what's wrong with me? Like,
Right.
what was wrong with me that they felt that they couldn't be together and raise me, that they had to separate and go start other families,
Right.
so of course that affected my self-esteem, my self-worth, always questioning, am I good, like, am I good enough? I'm not good enough. So, and that was another, like, core belief that I had to sit with and reprogram and
Mm.
get down to the root of like why I always felt like, no matter what I did, I felt like insignificant, that I didn't feel like I was good enough. I was always, seeking approval from my mother. My father, I got pregnant with my daughter at 19. So I wasn't able to go to college, even though he had colleges lined up for me.
Mm.
My junior year going into my senior year, he already had like a couple colleges lined up. He was talking to like, the deans and whatnot. So that was a huge disappointment for him. So I became an overachiever. When I did go to college, I didn't go to college and get one degree. I went to college and got 3 degrees.
Yeah.
So it was like, I was trying to make up for the fact that like, I couldn't attend college when he wanted me to. Um, and I still, it wasn't until last year I was still doing that. Even like, with my certifications, I was like, it was certification after certification after certification. And then I met a lady and she's like, well, how many more certifications do you need before you actually start your business? What is this? And I had to like really sit and say, once again, it's my father. I'm trying to like, even with him being gone, I'm still trying to like get that approval, right?
Mm. Yes. Yes.
It's crazy.
It is crazy, right? I mean, but that's where the people pleasing come in. And I think even as adults, um, if our parents are still around, we still have a side of us um, that we want their approval in what we do. And I think it trickles over into the friends, the our friendship circles, the relationships that we have in that aspect. It trickles over into there as well. And what we tend to do when we try to people please, we find people that are emotionally damaged in order to fill a spot so we can feel validated or needed. Um, but again, these are just my thoughts, right? You know what I'm saying? These are and nothing is written in stone. I was just thinking about that because I do see a lot of that, and I do remember when I first got into this field of grief and trauma and understanding to the depth that I do now. That that is so common across the board. And making Yasu right, the hurt attracts the hurt. Hurt people attract hurt people, and not we not understanding the destructive nature of that because it's easy for us and I could be wrong. I want to get your thoughts on this. It's easy for us to attract hurt people, give them what they need, and then blame them when they hurt us in return. It's easy to go, well, I did this for you, and I can't believe that you treated me this way. I think that is a common phrase that I've heard so many times. I want to get your thoughts on that.
Oh, jeez. My thought. My thought.
that, that goes deep, doesn't it? Right? It really makes you think about the things that we do as human beings.
Right. And I think I know for me personally, when I let go of how other people should react or how I felt they should react because that's how I would react in the situation,
Hmm.
the less that I got disappointed because I know just because I react that way doesn't mean that A, B, and C are going to react that way as well.
Right.
Their thought process and their perception or even like their morale is totally different than mine. So why should I expect, that person to react the way I should? So I think, we kind of put these expectations on how people should react to different situations because that's how we would do it.
Right.
And
Yeah.
once you take those expectations away and just, accept people for who they are, that's how they are. Um, then we'll be less disappointed and less hurt. And just, be accepting of, hey, okay, well, they may have not, been there for me like I would have been there for them. And like,
Right.
and that was like one of my realizations, like even like when I was going through my whole like deep depression, I felt like everybody abandoned me. Like there was nobody around me.
Right.
Um,
Right.
I felt totally alone. And it was like, wow, where's all these people that supposedly care for me? Where's all these people that supposedly love me? I'm sitting here like on the verge of like every single day committing suicide. Where are these people that love me? And then I had to sit and say, like, I need to show up for myself. Because like at the end of the day, when we go through our darkest times, who's going to be there for ourselves?
Right.
Us. So why should I keep on putting these expectations on other people to be there for me? I should love me and go within me and fix me.
Hmm.
And love me.
I want to touch on that just a little bit because I do understand, and Lincoln kind of understood where you was coming from, and so let's widen the view just a little bit to have a different understanding, or another see it from a different perspective. Most people don't know how to hold themselves accountable, right? Because a lot of times people have been victimized so much. And what I mean by that, I'm talking from a place of experience, and not expertise, but just a little bit of experience. I was in a narcissistic abusive relationship, and after going through that, having to heal from some things, and I realized, that I couldn't change that individual, but the damage to me was already done. Right? This woman stripped me of everything that I had, everything that I thought that I knew about me. She stripped, right? And no accountability whatsoever. And it wasn't until later on, and I'm speaking of my son's mother, it wasn't until later on I had to learn how to forgive. I had to learn how to go, this is just who she is. And I had to develop a way of interacting with her that it didn't no longer affect me or my son, right? And so I think that was the beginning stages of me understanding the work that needed to be done on me. Because a long time ago, I would have taken it personal, and I probably would have ran her over with a car, and just something like that. I probably would have did something like that a long time ago. But then I told myself, I said, she's not worth it. It is not worth the mental capacity that it would take for me to get angry with this individual, because it's not going to change what she does, and it's not going to change the way that she acts. And I took control over that aspect of it for myself and said, I want to be better than that, because for one, I had something bigger that I could fight for, and it was my son. And I wanted to be an example of what a good man was, of what a good man could be. But now that goes back into me understanding that for the longest time, I didn't know what a man was supposed to be. I thought that we all went out and fought in the streets and sold drugs and went to prison and got shot. I thought that's what men supposed to do, go out here. And then, we get to a certain age, we're supposed to follow a certain pattern. We got to protect those that we love by any means necessary. So I was willing to give my life for anyone just because I thought it was the thing I was supposed to do. And my loyalty was misused to the point to where I stopped. I forgot who I was. I was so busy being loyal to everyone else, I forgot to be loyal to myself. And that can take you down a really dark road as well, right? But there's a compilation of things that are compiled into that where I got to that point, right? So now I pick and choose. I do have the ability to do that. I can make a choice. I realize that. Okay, I got it.
Right.
Get your thoughts on that for a minute.
Yeah, I feel like, loneliness is that's a hard one when you don't feel like you have anybody who's there to like be your backbone or your support. And I think that's when the self-healing comes into play, because at the end of the day, I mean, we only have ourselves, right? I mean, like we have those people who come around and they influence us and motivate us to be our best version of ourselves. Like, I've come across quite a few of those people within like the last year. They've helped me along my journey. So I don't think that I would be sitting here if I hadn't come across those people. But I think they were a part of me that I may have been missing. So therefore they made me go in and self-reflect and grow. There was one lady who I came across, she was on lives. I didn't have the self-esteem to go live. I was very self-critical. Once again, that came from childhood trauma. So, I admired her for going live and just being raw, and that seeing her made me go and self-reflect and put in the work and heal that part of me that I didn't feel like I was confident enough, or that I didn't deserve to put myself out there. So
I get that. I definitely get that. And it's crazy because you saying that actually that hit deep. That hit deep. And I want to say this, because it's something that you just helped me validate the things that I've always been thinking about. We all play a role in each other's lives when we come up. And it's only because sometimes we're here to walk each other to our next destination. We never know what the next person is going through until we walk with them. And that's a privilege and an honor to be able to do that, right? There are some of us that are very temporary in people's lives, and that's a role that we play. But here's the key point to that. No matter when we come, we're either a student or a teacher when we join with these individuals. They carry something that we need, and oftentimes we carry stuff that other people need. We just have to learn how it rolls. It's not personal. It really isn't. I don't know where your journey is going to lead you, but I'm excited to see where it leads you, right? And I know when you have to break off from me and go and follow your path, it's going to be filled with things that you may not understand. And it's going to be filled with things that filled with people that play a role. And sometimes people are there to teach you a lesson. And sometimes people are there to give you a blessing, right? You know what I'm saying? But again, it's not personal. It's what you need. It's like nothing is ever wasted. These people come along to give you what you need when you need it. And that's what makes us who we are. Because we get to choose how we interpret that information and process it and take away from what we need, but carry what maybe someone else needs as well.
Right.
But again, that comes from doing a lot of shadow work too, right? You know what I'm saying? I don't know if anybody caught on to what was doing, but we are diving deep into that shadow work of understanding yourself in the roles that you may play in other people's lives, but the deep embedded work that goes along with that. That's why I love these deep conversations because it takes us there. And opens up the door. So anybody out there curious about shadow work, go grab one of those books and do that work. It's definitely well worth it. Definitely well worth it. Um, and with that being said, um, unfortunately, I do have to. I have another person out here outside of here, but Jamie, I want to offer you to come back again, and let's talk more. I love this. I love this conversation. Right? But I would like to. I would like to do this again if you're ever up to it and things like.
Definitely, definitely. Like, I was a little nervous at first, so my nerves are calmed down. So definitely, I would love to come back again.
I would love to have you. I'd love to have you, and we can talk about whatever you want to talk about when you come back. Now, before I let you go, um, tell people where they can find you because you got some things coming up. You got a podcast coming up as well. Right?
Yes, yes. So I have a podcast coming up on my YouTube channel, which is Allied, ALLIED apostrophe S Holistic Health. And it's called Allied Holistic Lounge, but it's spelled like, I put a twist on the holistic. It's spelled WHOLISTIC. So, so it's going to be starting next month, and I'm excited about it because I have some like really amazing guests so far. I have this one lady who deals with ancestral trauma, and stored within the genetics. I have a shaman, a woman shaman coming on. So and then I have on a lady who wrote a book, and it's about grief, how she actually, went through this divorce of her finding out that her husband had sugar babies. Can I say that? Prostitute?
Oh yeah, go right ahead. Like I said, this is for educational purposes only.
I get in trouble by YouTuber.
Yeah, we do have a parental restriction on here with the children, so yeah.
I have some amazing people coming on that I've interviewed for the podcast, and I'm really excited about it. And then I have a quantum healer who is actually, she helped me through a lot of things that I was going through when I started this whole journey. So she's a friend of mine, and I'm having her on as well. So I'm excited.
I'm looking forward to that. And of course, I'm adding a new segment into the magazine. I think we talked about that as well. And I would be honored if you would allow me to add your podcast there so people know where to find you. And then, and I'll email you to get some more details to add in there, but only with your permission as well. Because I think that is freaking phenomenal. And, I'm always looking at ways to support those of us in this field that are doing amazing work. And like I said, I love seeing the direction that people go in. It always excites me to see where you're going, and knowing how I can support you in those different ways as well. So now, with that being said, Jame, how can people find you?
Well, besides the YouTube channel, you can visit me at Allied Inc. 3, and that's ALLIED INK number 3.com. I have all my email, my business phone number, and all my contact information on there. You can I actually have a live chat as well. So if you want to chat with me, you can send me a message on the website.
Yes. And you did give me your information and everything. So, guys, do me a favor, go over to the YouTube channel and check her out, please. And with that being said, Jamie, thank you for being on here today. I look forward to doing this again with you. And for everyone else who's been tuning in on LinkedIn, well, not LinkedIn, on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, guys, if you haven't already, head over to the YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button, and hit that bell notification so you guys can stay. For everyone who's been tuning in, just tuned in and everything, if you're looking for, go and check out the full episode, right? And show Jamie that support and let her know that that you find her here. And with that being said, you guys, we're going to finish off this episode of the Grief Let's Talk About It podcast. And you guys already know we're going to be bringing daily episodes to you guys as always. But also be on the lookout for the magazine. Like I said, I'm adding in new segments, and if you guys haven't been hip to it and you guys follow me on Facebook, then you guys already know we're doing some big things, right? And so our information is going to be in there as well. And so, yeah. With that being said, Jamie, thank you for the honor of having you up here and share your journey, your knowledge, and your story with us. And I look forward to many more, many more. Thank you.
And thank you for having me on.
You're very welcome. For everyone else, we're going to see you guys in the next episode. But until that time, you guys already know. Go out there, make people smile, create memories, because you never know when you may see them again. And we only have one life, so make sure you have the best human experience that you could possibly have. Until next time, guys, stay up. Peace. Oh.